Okay, well, this is the day of the big trial. Now, you've been through almost every lesson that we have, and today we're going to give you the whole jury trial. Now, unfortunately, every state has different requirements for juries, and they have different size courtrooms, and just everything is totally different. So we're going to just tell you briefly how we're going to handle this one today, and it's not the way it's done in Idaho. It doesn't really make any difference. The procedures are basically the same. We're going to proceed today with a 4-person jury rather than a 6, which Idaho calls for because of space limitations. And we're going to not have some of the formalities that normally transpire in selecting a jury. For example, in Idaho, each person would be assigned a number, and they would go into a box, and they'd roll a little box or shake it or something like that, and then the clerk would call that number out, and that person would have a corresponding number, and they would move forward and take a position in the jury. Now, I don't know how it's done in the other states, but that's just the way it's done here. And they all have their little procedures for doing that. And I don't want to get into that, and it's not relevant. So we're going to skip that portion of it, and we're going to enter with the opening of the court and assume all that's transpired, or just completely forget that it ever happened. And we're going to start with the proceedings as the judge is coming in, and then we'll call for the jury, and then we'll give the jury instructions, and then we'll start immediately with the examination of the jury. So here it is. This is what you've been waiting for, the whole jury trial in a nutshell. We're going to start right now.
All rise.
Morning. Well, today we're here for a jury trial. The case before us is Joe Sixpack. The case number is 831260-B. I guess the first thing we need to find out is the parties ready to proceed forward, Mr. Prosecutor?
Yes, Your Honor, we're ready.
Is the defendant ready to proceed?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then we might as well bring in the jury. Okay. Got our jury. Now let's swear the jury in at this time, please. Clerk, would you please read the oath to the jury?
Would you raise your right hand, please? Okay. Now, do you solemnly swear that you will truthfully answer all questions propounded to you, be the court and by the counsel under direction of the court, touching upon your fitness and qualification to sit as a trial juror in this case, so help you God?
I do. I do.
Okay, I'm required at this time to ask the jury a few administrative questions, and I want you to answer them and wait until I answer the question. Ask the question before you answer it, please. And I want all of you to nod your head or somebody symbolize that you understand it, or if the answer is negative, be sure and speak out so that I'll know that your answer is in the negative. Make sure that I know that. Does everybody understand that? Okay. First question I need to know, and everybody has their name, address, and employment in front of them, and that's correct. And does the prosecution and the defendant have that information?
Yes, sir. Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, fine. Well, then we'll dispense with that. Are any of you related to the defendant?
No.
Okay. Do you know the prosecutor at all?
No.
No.
Okay. Does the relationship of the guardian, ward, attorney, and client, master, servant, landlord, and tenant, boarder, or lodger exist between you, the defendant, or the person injured, or between you or the person who signed the complaint? I'll tell you that the complaint was signed by Officer Schmedley. Does anybody know Officer Schmedley? Do you have any of those relationships with any of those people?
No.
Okay. Are you a party in any civil action against the defendant?
No.
Or anybody that may be in the courtroom?
No.
Okay. Have you ever complained against him or her, or been accused by him or her in a criminal action or prosecution?
No.
Okay. Have you ever formed or expressed an unqualified opinion that the defendant is guilty or not guilty of the offense charged?
No.
You don't have any preconceived notions of guilt or innocence at this time?
No.
Okay. Do you know of any reason why you cannot sit as a fair and impartial juror in this action?
No.
Okay. That's all the questions I'm required to ask. I wanted to let you know that right now you're going to go through an examination on the part of the prosecution and also the defendant. Now, they're going to both ask you general questions at first, and that you'll all answer and respond to, and then they will later ask you individual questions personally. Everybody understand? Such another procedure, and when we get done, then we'll get on with the trial. Okay, Mr. Prosecutor.
Yes, sir. I'd like to ask a few questions of the first member of the jury. Could you please state your name?
Mr. Prosecutor, let's ask the general questions first, please, and then the specific ones later.
Okay. First of all, Do you have any reservations as far as being a member of the jury?
No.
In other words, you would sit as a without any. You're not in any hurry to get to any other function, or you're doing this of your own free will and everything. Is that correct?
That's right.
Yes. Okay. And you said none of you are any personal relationship with the defendant or with the state. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay. Thank you, Your Honor. I think that the state's satisfied at this point.
Okay, do you have any general questions, Mr. Sixpack?
Yes, Your Honor. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I'm Joe Sixpack, and I'm the defendant in this case, and I'm just going to ask a few general questions to determine whether or not you're generally qualified to be a jury. First question is, how many of you have driver's licenses?
I do.
You all do. Okay. How many of you drive a car?
I do.
All of you. Do you own your own vehicles, or now I need to rephrase that. Do you own it, or are you financing? How many of you own the vehicle?
I finance.
Oh, we got one financing. Okay. Let's see. I guess have you ever sat on a criminal case before? A jury for a criminal case?
Not me.
Not me.
No.
Let's see. Well, I guess we're okay then. That's all, Your Honor.
Okay, you can continue, Mr. Prosecutor, if there are any additional questions.
Yes, sir. See, Mr. Powell, I believe, is that correct?
That's right.
Yes, sir. Mr. Powell, how long have you, were you a citizen of the state of Idaho, is that correct?
Yes, I am.
Okay, and how long have you lived here?
3 months.
3 months. And who do you work for?
Jones West Ford.
Jones West Ford. You're an automobile salesman, is that correct?
That's right.
And you've ever been a juror on any type of trial before?
No, I haven't.
No, this is your first time?
Yes.
And you have no reservations about sitting as a juror today, is that correct?
No.
Okay. I think that the state would pass for cause, Mr. Powell.
Mr. Sixpack?
I don't believe I have any questions, Your Honor.
You have no questions to ask Mr. Powell?
No, sir.
Okay, I'll proceed, Mr. Prosecutor. Next juror.
Could you state your full name for the state, please?
Margaret Qualman.
Mrs. Qualman.
Yes.
And could you spell that for us, please?
Qualman.
Okay, and Mrs. Qualman, you are a resident of the state of Idaho.
Yes, sir.
And what city do you live in?
Nampa.
Nampa, Idaho. And how long have you been a citizen?
Of the state of Idaho?
Yes.
Oh, approximately since 1937.
It's 37, okay. And do you have any reservations about being a member of the jury today?
No.
You can give an impartial determination. You have no feelings one way or the other, strong feelings towards or against the defendant or the state, is that correct?
I don't think so.
Okay. Any state would pass cause this juror.
Okay, Mr. Sixpack?
Ms. Qualman, do you have any any relatives in law enforcement work?
Not at the present.
Have you had in the past?
Yes.
And who was that?
Well, my daughter used to work for Driver's Improvement. She was a Driver's Improvement counselor, and I worked for the Department of Motor Vehicles as a title examiner.
Now, in your daughter's work, was she dealing with drivers of motor vehicles that had problems with
Yes.
And she was working with rehabilitation?
Yes.
Now, wasn't a lot of that work based on prior citations and convictions of traffic offenses?
Yes.
Now, we need to, of course, this questioning is to determine your biases, if you have any, or opinions, and so I'm going to kind of inquire into that. Do you generally believe that the officers that cite people for driving offenses are doing a job and doing their job well and that they're basically honest?
Well, that's a hard question to answer.
Well, your daughter, of course, worked with a lot of policemen and a lot of police reports, and she had to base her work on the honesty of an officership.
Yes.
And, of course, you probably believe that most officers are doing their job and they're honest and impartial.
Well, I think so.
Well, if it came to a position in court where the testimony of the officer was in contradiction to the testimony of a citizen, would you feel that the testimony of the officer had any more weight to it and it was more liable to be truthful?
No.
Well, now, he's a professional man, of course, and, that's his job, and he's trained to be a witness, and he's trained in testifying in court. And the citizen, of course, he's the defendant, and he has his own interest to protect. Don't you suppose that there'd be a little more truthfulness inherent in the officer's testimony?
Well, it's possible.
Mm-hmm. If it came down, now this is kind of getting picky, I know, but if it came right down the wire and we just had one that said one thing and then the other said the other, in your own mind, you'd have to make a decision as to which one was telling the truth. Would you be able to be impartial about that?
I think so. I'd weigh one against the other.
Okay. Well, thank you. I have no further questions.
Mr. Prosecutor.
Mrs. Coleman, would you want to ask Mrs. Coleman some more questions? Yes, I would like to ask her another question, Mrs. Coleman. In your work with the state, did you build up any animosities towards your employer or people that you worked with while you were on service to the state of Idaho?
No.
None whatsoever?
No.
So that would not have a bearing on a determination that you might rule against the state just for that purpose. Is that correct?
No.
Okay. And was it your daughter that worked for the state?
Yes.
Is that correct? And she would be of the same type. You have no animosities towards the state regarding her employment either that were?
No.
Okay. No further questions.
Okay, we want to proceed to the next one.
Okay. And Mr. Paulman, is that correct?
My name's Harry Johnson.
Oh, Mr. Johnson, excuse me. I thought you were the husband of Mrs. Paulman. But
No. I'm Harry Johnson.
Harry Johnson. Okay, Harry. Whereabouts do you reside?
I live over in the Napa area and have since 1929.
Okay. And what type of work are you engaged in?
I'm a farmer.
You're a farmer, and you've been a farmer all your life?
Practically. I do a little bit of everything. I'm a jack of all trades.
Have you had many dealings with state government in your...
No, I don't. I've never dealt with the government too much.
Not too much. You've never had any unpleasant encounters or...
No, I have a lot of friends in government. They're nice people.
I see. Okay. And you have nobody, the members of the family that work for the government?
No, we all just work there at the farm.
So you basically think you could render a objective decision in
I believe I can
before the court today?
Yes, I have a pretty clear mind on things and good issues.
Thank you so much. We'll pass Mr. Johnson for thought.
Okay. Mr. Sixpack.
Mr. Johnson, have you ever had any traffic tickets given against you?
I get some once in a while, but not too often. I try to keep things pretty well under control.
Well, what kind of conduct did the officers display in this case?
Well, they were pretty nice people. Yeah, say pretty cooperative.
You don't have any complaints against any of them?
No, he was pretty nice. He realized I was a farmer and I was doing my job hauling things to town at the time he stopped me.
Oh, it's just one officer you're speaking of?
Yes.
When was this event?
Oh, this must have been 5-6 years ago, maybe 7.
Have you had any tickets since then?
No, I don't get to town too often, but I go in and back, go back and forth once in a while.
I see. Well, I kind of need to ask you the same sort of question. It's kind of necessary in my case. I did for Mrs. Qualman there. If we came to a kind of a Mexican standoff, so to speak, and we had one testimony of the officer differing with the testimony of the citizen, would you be inclined to believe one more than the other?
No, I find that dealing with people, most people are pretty truthful, and you can kind of tell by their actions that they're pretty, whether they're a little bit off or not. Most people lie you can tell by their face. And I've learned to kind of read the facial features as I look at them.
Now, the state here is going to be spending a lot of money in this. This trial is probably going to cost between $1,000 and $1,500, and it looks bad if they go all the way through trial and then lose.
Mm-hmm.
So we might ought to be aware that the officer might color his story a little bit.
Well, most officers, as well as other people, you can kind of tell by the way they hold their face. You study that. I learned that when I was a young man, that each person kind of gives away, as well as the way they tell their story. And you have to weigh everything that they say. So I'm going to try to be impartial with
I'm
this.
sure
It's my way of thinking.
You'll watch both witnesses.
Both.
And,
both. I'm going to watch this real close. I was taught this when I was young.
But you'll be totally impartial then between
to either party. Yes, I'm gonna watch it real close.
Well, that's all we can ask. Thank you. You've been cooperative. I think I have no more questions.
Okay, Mr. Prosecutor, I'll examine the last year. Could you state your full name, please?
Tom Turnkey.
Tom Turnkey. Okay, Mr. Turnkey. You are, I guess, a resident of Boise City?
That is correct.
Boise City, okay. And you've lived here how long?
7 years.
7 years. And you are employed by whom?
I'm employed by a general contractor.
Okay. Have you ever worked for government, any branch of government in your...
Not directly, never have.
Okay.
Except when I was in the service.
You were a member of the military then
Yes.
at one time, I see. Do any of the members of your family ever work for the government or presently working for any
No.
division?
Not of my immediate family.
Okay. Any close friends?
Well, I have 2 or 3 friends who are in government. They're close friends.
How close?
We could play cards and stuff occasionally.
And they have a good relationship with their present occupation and working for the government?
Oh, yes.
No problems there?
No.
Okay. I think the state would pass this juror.
Mr. Sixpack.
Mr. Turnkey, do you have any relationships in the law enforcement field?
No, not
Any
really.
friends or relatives?
No.
I see. Have you had much contact with law enforcement officers?
Very little.
Any traffic tickets or that kind of thing?
I think I've had 3 or 4 traffic tickets in my life.
And what was the outcome on those?
I just paid the fine and let it go every time I was guilty.
Then you didn't argue with the tickets. You didn't feel that they were unjust?
Well, no, I didn't really think it was all that unjust, and it was just easier to go ahead and pay the ticket and forget about it.
What do you think of somebody then that wants to take on the government, so to speak, and come in here and have a big full-blown trial, and just because he thinks that the officer was in error? Is this frivolous in your eyes, or what?
I guess if that's what he wants to do, I guess that's what he has to do.
Do you feel that he should just admit his guilt and go ahead if the officer says he was guilty and pay the thing?
Not necessarily, no.
Of course, you're aware that it's a matter of constitutional right for every citizen to have due process of law if he wants, have a trial. You aware of that?
Yeah. I've heard that.
Well, if we come to a point where the officer and the citizen are kind of at loggerheads and can't seem to get their story straight, are you going to be impartial between the two?
Oh, yes, most definitely.
You said that you didn't have any objections to the citations before that you've had. Did you feel that you were guilty?
Yes.
And let's say if you had been charged with taking a wrong left turn or something, and you felt that you were in the right and you could make the turn, would you go through with a trial like this?
I believe so. Yes, that would have to depend on the circumstance.
I see. Okay. Well, thank you. No further questions.
Well, that seemed to progress quite nicely. I guess we have a jury then, gentlemen. Guess now's all we need to do is to swear the jury in. Would you mind reading the oath to the jury, please? Raise your right hands, please.
Raise your hands, please. Yes. You swear that you will well and truly try the matter in issue between the state of Idaho and Mr. Sixpack, the defendant, and a true verdict render according to the evidence.
I do.
I do.
Okay, gentlemen, we're ready to proceed.
In this scenario, we're going to show you how to bump jurors off for cause. Now remember, in every court trial, every jury trial I should say, you'll have 3 to 12 preemptory challenges. And those challenges you can use in any way you want. It's like voting or voting by proxy. You can use it and throw somebody off the jury for no reason at all, because you just for whatever reason feel you don't like that person, or that person to you gives you a bad feeling. But there's the other challenge, and that's called a challenge for cause. And if a juror will exemplify some type of prejudiced, biased, he's got his mind made up. As an example, let's say you're being tried on a marijuana charge, and a man says, well, one of the things that you'd be looking for would be, does he belong to a group or an organization that is prejudiced against marijuana? For instance, RID as an example, RID, RID drivers or intoxicated drivers from the road. If this is a drunk driving case, you have a right to ask questions like, do you belong to any groups, organizations, or political organizations that are opposed to drinking or marijuana? And so it's for cause that we're going to illustrate some questions and answers as to the methodology for throwing a juror off for cause. So over here we have our jury panel, and over here we have Mr. John Curtis. Mr. Curtis is a defendant. He's being charged with failure to stop at a stop sign at a railroad crossing. He's been arrested. He wasn't taken to jail in this case. He stood mute. He's demanded all of his rights. He's gone through 2 motion hearings, an evidentiary hearing, and here we are at the trial. And so, Mr. Curtis, would you like to begin your voir dire?
Okay. Juror number 1, I guess it's number 1, 2, 3, and 4 here.
Juror number 1, would you tell us
your name?
Margaret Johnson.
Margaret Johnson. Then would you spell your last name?
Johnsson.
Thank you. Are you married?
Yes.
Do you have any children?
4.
4. Where were you born?
South Dakota.
And how long have you lived in Idaho?
About 47 years.
47 years. Let's talk a bit about your education. Are you graduated high school?
Yes.
College?
No.
Have you had any education beyond high school?
I've had some college courses, but
Not full-time
no.
students. Where did you study? Where did you take your courses in college?
Boise State.
Boise State College. What type of courses were they?
Had some real estate and different things like that.
Do you work now?
No.
Have you worked in the past, or
Yes.
have you been? What type of work did you do?
Well, I worked for the state law enforcement department.
Law enforcement department. In what capacity?
Title clerk.
Title clerk. Have you ever been on a jury before?
No.
This is your first time?
Yes.
Do you want to be on the jury?
I don't know.
You don't know. Well, it seems to me you must have some feeling about it. Do you want not to be on the jury?
Well, it would be a new experience that I've never had.
Let me see if I get the sense of what you're telling. It seems to me that you're trying to say you don't really want to be on the jury, but it would be an education for you. Is that it?
Yes.
Okay. Do I look like I'm guilty?
No, not really.
Not really. Do I look like I'm innocent?
Well, I wouldn't know until I heard the circumstances.
Okay. If you were on the jury, if you are selected for the jury, and the vote is 3-1 against you, would you, and you thought you were right, could you hold out for your ideas?
I think so.
Are you stubborn?
Yes.
Okay. So if you think I'm innocent, you will vote not guilty, and in spite of what anybody else says, you will vote not guilty.
Right.
Right. That's the kind of jurors I like. Would it be inconvenient for you to serve on this jury? Would you have other things you want to be doing?
No.
Do you think that everyone has to obey every law?
Well, only those that apply to them.
And do you think that all laws are constitutional?
No.
Have you heard of the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution?
Well, yes.
Do you think that it's right that a person should not answer if he thinks it would incriminate him?
No, I don't think you should.
You think it's right that he should not?
Yes.
Okay. Have you ever read the Constitution?
Well, I've read it off and on, but not lately.
If I don't take the witness stand, do you think, will that influence you to think that I might be guilty?
No.
What if I refuse to answer a question by taking the Fifth Amendment? Will that cause you to be suspicious?
Well, it might.
It might. Your Honor, I think that's a cause for dismissing this juror. It's clear that the Fifth Amendment, that I have the right to take the Fifth Amendment, and if that causes a juror to be suspicious, I feel that that's grounds for dismissal.
I'll withhold my judgment on that question. It's highly speculative as to whether or not you're going to take the Fifth Amendment, because we don't know whether or not you're going to take the witness stand.
How do you feel about conducting this trial over such a seemingly petty offense? It's going to cost the state a bit of money, and does that concern you at all?
Well, if that's the only way it can be resolved, then that's the way it should be.
Okay. Are you active politically at all?
No.
Don't belong to you're not formally a member of any political party?
No.
How about social organizations? Are you a member of any social organizations? How about any other organization?
No.
You're not a member?
No.
How do you feel about my representing myself in this case? The lawyers have a saying that the person who represents himself has a fool for a client. Do you think that?
No.
Never mind. Let me ask you this then. Since the sheriff has drugged me in here and the state's gone to a great expense to try me, and the prosecutor is sitting here trying to send me to jail, don't you think, does that lead you to be suspicious that of the fact that I might be guilty?
Well, it possibly could.
Thank you, Your Honor. I think that constitutes grounds.
I think I would agree, Mr. Curtis, that possibly this juror would be somewhat opinionated. That for that reason, you're going to challenge for cause.
I'm going to challenge for cause.
And what that means, Mrs. Keller, is that you'll be excused for cause, but you will still be on jury duty for the rest of the week, so you'll still have to come in tomorrow at 9 o'clock. Okay, if you'll vacate your seat, we'll bring in the next juror, Mr. Charles Powell. Charles Powell. Mr. Powell, would you take seat number 1? Okay, let's go on, Mr. Curtis, and interview juror number 2. And what was your name, sir?
Dallas Coleman.
Okay, Mr. Qualman. Way down, Mr. Qualman.
Okay, Mr. Qualman, would you spell your last name for me, please?
Qualman.
Thank you. Mr. Qualman, in order that I may select those jurors which I think most fit to judge me in this case, I would like to get to know you a little bit. Are you married?
Yes.
How long have you been married?
Oh, about 40 years.
About 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
Would it be 41 or?
Oh, could be. Could be.
Could it be 42?
Well, pretty close.
How about 43 then?
No, that'd be close enough.
I'm getting colder.
Yeah.
Okay. Call it 42. Do you have any children?
I got 3 boys.
And how old are they?
Oh, they've all left home. I don't keep track of their age anymore.
Would they be over 21?
Oh, yes, all of them.
Mm-hmm. All of them over 21. And can you remember their names?
Yeah.
Could you tell me their names?
Well, there's Carl and Ron and Bern.
Have any of them ever gotten into trouble with the law?
Oh, some.
Some.
Mm-hmm.
Any of them ever spend any time in jail?
Oh, yeah, a little.
A little.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about the authorities sending your kids to jail?
I didn't like it very well.
Didn't like it very well.
Mm-mm. No, I want my children to be out on the road and have a good time.
Are you native of Idaho?
Oh, yes.
Where were you born?
In the eastern part of the state.
The eastern part?
Mm-hmm.
You mean over around Lewiston?
No, eastern would be over around Pocatello.
Around Pocatello. Were you born in Pocatello?
No, just out on a little old town outside of Pocatello.
Does it have a name?
Yeah, but it's all gone now. I don't think you can find that place. It's just a little small place there.
Well, what was it called when it was there?
Oh, I think it was Lund.
Lund. Have you finished high school?
No.
Have you finished grade school?
Yeah, I went 2 years to high school.
2 years of high school. You obviously did not go to college.
No.
Are you employed?
No, I work for myself.
You're self-employed. What kind of work do you do?
Oh, I'm a jack of all trades.
Well,
I kind of done a little carpentry and a little mechanic and a little bit of everything.
Grade school?
Yeah, I went 2 years to high school.
2 years of high school. You obviously did not go to college.
No.
Are you employed?
No, I work for myself.
You're self-employed. What kind of work do you do?
Oh, I'm a jack of all trades.
Well,
I kind of done a little carpentry and a little mechanic and a little bit of everything.
been a doctor?
No, pretty near tried it though.
Just trades.
Mostly trade,
yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever been on a jury before?
No.
This is your first time. How do you feel about it? If your possibility of being on a jury?
Well, it looks like it'd be all right.
If you get to be on the jury, and you are the sole holdout, you think you could maintain your position against the rest of the jurors?
Yeah.
You feel strongly about these matters, and you're a bit stubborn. Is that what you're trying to say?
I make up my mind. I make it up pretty solid.
Even is there any possibility the other jurors might be able to convince you you're wrong?
No, that's pretty hard for them to do.
How do you feel about this case? It's kind of a small case, isn't it? Do you think you should be wasting your time on something like this?
Well, it's kind of hard to say yet. I haven't got into it enough. And it kind of looks like it's a pretty small thing to be trying.
Since the state is going to spend a lot of money on this, you really feel that I should plead guilty and have it over with. Is that right?
Well, in a way, but then on another way, of course, you've got your rights. But it isn't too good.
Well, Your Honor, I think that is sufficient grounds for a challenge for cause.
I agree, Mr. Curtis. Mr. Qualman, I think that we'll excuse you from the jury. You can hold your seat right now, but I think that challenge for cause will stand. Let's go on to juror number 3. What was your name, ma'am?
Pat White.
Pat White. Okay, Mr. Curtis, you may begin.
Thank you, Your Honor. Would you spell your last name for me?
W-H-I-T-E.
Just like it sounds.
Yes, sir.
Let's see. Are you married, Miss White?
Yes, I am.
Married. Then I can call you Mrs. White.
You sure can.
Do you have any children?
Yes, I do.
Do you remember their names?
Yes, Paula and David.
You have 2 then.
Yes, I do.
Where do you live, Mrs. White?
Here in Boise.
You're in Boise. Are you a native of Idaho?
No, I'm not.
You're not. Where were you born?
Missouri.
Missouri. Does it then follow that you follow the philosophy attributed to Missourians that you have to be shown?
Yes, sir.
And that if the state fails to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that I'm guilty, that you will say I'm innocent?
That is correct.
And that you're stubborn enough to maintain that position?
I am stubborn enough.
Let's see, red hair. All right. We didn't get your schooling on the record yet, did we? Did you? Have you finished high school?
Yes, I have.
You gone to college?
Have not.
You have not. Are you employed?
I am not.
You're not employed. Since you're married and have children, I would presume then that you're a housewife. Spend your time working at home.
I do at this time, yes.
Have you been on a jury before?
Yes, I have.
What was the nature of the case?
2 of the cases were criminal and 1 was civil.
And in the criminal cases, what was the charge?
It's been a while back. One was breaking and entering and holding a captive, but I don't know if he was charged with that or not. And the other one was theft.
No traffic cases?
No, sir.
Did these cases on which you sat go to the jury? Did the jury decide the case?
That is correct, yes it did.
How did they come out?
Breaking and entering was guilty, and the theft was innocent.
In other words, you can make up your mind regardless of what the state has to say.
That's correct.
Do you think that every person has to obey every law?
Yes, sir.
No exceptions?
I don't think so.
Have you ever read the Constitution of the United States?
Not completely through.
Not completely through. You heard of the Fifth Amendment?
Yes, sir.
If I take the Fifth Amendment, if I go to the witness stand and I take the Fifth Amendment, would you hold that? Will that cause you to be suspicious that I'm trying to hide something?
I don't think so.
If the prosecutor asks me a question and I refuse to answer, you don't think that would influence you at all?
No, I don't think so.
Wouldn't you think that if I refuse to answer a question that I might have something to hide?
Well, perhaps.
And that the thing I had to hide was the fact that I might be guilty?
Perhaps.
Do you have time enough to serve in this case?
Yes, I do.
And having served on 3 juries already, might you not think that you've served your time on juries?
No, I enjoy it.
You enjoy being on a
do.
jury. The state is obviously spending a considerable amount of money on this case, and it's a simple case of a traffic stop. I think the fine for it is something like $25. Doesn't that make you a little upset that the state is spending so much money to gain so little?
No. You're entitled to your day in court.
Okay. Do you resent the fact that I am taking up all this time just for such a rinky-dink matter?
No.
I think it's perfectly all right. How long do you think it would take the state to go bankrupt if everyone did this?
Oh, I don't know, sir.
You think it could be a problem, though?
I don't know that for sure.
How much do you think it is costing the state to put on this trial?
Oh, I wouldn't have any guess at all.
Could it be as much as $1,000?
Probably, yes.
And you think having the state spend $1,000 to gain $25 is all right?
Well, in financial terms, perhaps not, but you must believe you're innocent, or you would not be here to take your day in court.
Does it bother you that I'm representing myself?
No. Especially with my experience with lawyers.
How do you feel about men with beards?
I like them.
We'll leave that subject alone. How do you feel about my representing myself instead of having a lawyer do so?
I think that's perfectly
I
fine.
think that's fine. if you hear some new concepts while you're sitting in the jury here, can you learn and understand new concepts rapidly?
I think so.
Are you willing to try to understand a new concept if you have not heard of it before?
Oh, yes, sir, I think so.
What, are you active politically?
No.
You don't support or claim membership in any political party?
No, sir.
How about professional organizations, or are you a member of any professional organizations,
No.
social organizations?
No.
Red Cross?
No.
Anything like that? How do you feel about political minorities?
What would you reference that to?
Are you prejudiced in any way?
No, no, sir.
If a racial minority moved in beside you, how would you feel?
No differently. I don't believe.
You get along perfectly well. Being a Caucasian yourself, you would get along perfectly well with a black or a Hispanic or something like
I
that
think
living
so,
next
yes,
to you. Communist?
I don't know.
You don't know.
If they were to tell me that they were indeed communist, I might find my feathers a bit ruffled. Yes, sir.
And if you...
Excuse me, is that considered minority?
I would imagine so.
Okay, then I might be prejudiced.
You might be prejudiced against that minority.
Yes, sir.
And if you were to find out that I were a communist, would that have prejudiced you in this case?
It might, sir. Yes.
It might, sir. Well, Your Honor, I think we've established that this person does have a bias, both as to certain minorities and in being prejudiced if I were to take the Fifth Amendment. And I would think that would be reason for rejecting this juror for cause.
I disagree on both counts. Number one, I don't think you've established that this juror is biased in any way, because we haven't established that you are, in fact, a communist. So therefore, her being biased against communists doesn't have anything to do with you. And I think on the other question, what was the other issue there? It slips my mind.
The fact that she would be prejudiced if I took the Fifth Amendment.
Oh, on the Fifth Amendment. I think you're laboring under misinterpretation of the law. If you do, in fact, take the witness stand, you're going to have to be cross-examined, and you can't take the Fifth Amendment on cross-examination. So therefore, that's a matter of conjecture. So I think in that particular juror's case, I don't think that you're going to be able to impeach her for cause, but you still have your 3 peremptory challenges. Do you have any further questions?
Do you have any to see if I have further questions that might influence?
Okay, I might just interrupt right here before we go on to the next juror. Now, you'll notice that we're not going back and forth between the prosecutor and John for a reason. I want to expedite this to illustrate how you bump jurors. Now, so far he's been successful in bumping 2 jurors. But this particular juror is a pretty knowledgeable lady, and she's been on juries before, and she's answered all of these questions 3 times before. It's going to be extremely difficult to get this juror for cause. And I think for that reason, there were some other questions here that I think we ought to bring up right at this moment in time. Now, Mr. Curtis asked some questions that the prosecutor would have objected to. The communist question, the Constitution issue. Sometimes those questions can be snuck by, and sometimes they cannot. If the prosecutor objects, and he jumps up and he says, I object to this question, it has nothing to do with the qualifications of the juror, then it's up to you to come back with a good logical argument as to why it is. For instance, in a traffic case, let's see if we can bluff our way through here, Mr. Curtis. The prosecutor objects to your asking a constitutional question of the juror. Has that juror read the Constitution lately? Do you have an argument for that? What would you say if the prosecutor objected to that question?
Well, Your Honor, there may be some constitutional issues come up here, and it would be helpful if the juror had some knowledge of the Constitution, and the answer to that question would be very helpful to me in determining whether I should accept or reject that juror, because it seems to me that anyone who is knowledgeable about the Constitution would be a far better juror and be able to decide some of the issues which I may raise.
Okay, if I heard that argument, and I've seen that in the courtroom before, the judge would sustain the prosecutor's objection because it's not relevant. But let's try this one on for size. Your Honor, I have a reputation in the community of being a constitutionalist, and while there are no constitutional issues involved, I think it's necessary and imperative for me to ask questions of the jurors to see if they have any anti-constitutional biases. Because if they do, and I'm a pro-constitutionalist, or if in my presentation I should let the words Constitution out or Fifth Amendment, if a juror is predisposed toward constitutional bias, I should know it before we go forward. All right. There has to be a reason why that juror would be prejudiced for or against you. Always remember, you're looking for what is it about that juror that's for or against me. Now, the prosecutor isn't ignorant either, and he'll challenge for cause, and he'll use his peremptory challenges. And you can see that this man, Mr. Coleman over here, sounds like a pretty crusty old fellow from Idaho who would be the type of person who would probably turn a man loose, and he's probably pretty knowledgeable about the Constitution, and he's got a pretty good sense about him concerning making up his mind and doing what he wants to do. So you can see that from the questions that have been asked and answered. And these, by the way, are the typical questions that we ask and answer off of our basic 85 questions. But don't think now that these 85 questions are going to be appropriate for every juror every time. You may personally write 50 or 75 more questions of different types of questions depending upon the region that you live in or for some other reason. Let's take a look now at this juror number 4 over here at the end. What's your name, sir?
David Gibson.
Mr. Gibson? Mr. Curtis, would you like to begin voir dire with Mr. Gibson?
How do you spell your last name, Mr. Gibson?
Gibson.
I see that you have a beard, Mr. Gibson. Does having a beard, would my having a beard prejudice you in any way?
No, sir.
Are you married?
Yes, I am.
How long have you been married?
About 21 years.
21 years. And you have children?
Yes, I do.
And how many?
2.
Were you born in Idaho?
No, I was not.
Where were you born?
I was born in Los Angeles, California.
Los Angeles. How did you happen to get to Idaho?
Uncle Sam sent me here.
Would that be in the Korean War?
No, it was, I was sent to Mountain Home Air Force Base.
Have you finished high school? What education have you had?
I finished high school.
Then you've not studied any courses in college, or you taken any trade school training or anything?
No, sir.
Past high school?
No, sir.
Have you been on a jury before?
No, I have not.
This would be your first one. Are you currently employed?
Yes, I am.
Would being on the jury cause you any hardship? Are you working right now?
No, I don't believe it would.
You don't believe it would. Are you employed, or what do you do?
I am working in a firewood business.
You're in the firewood business. Are you self-employed or employed by someone else?
Employed by someone else.
Employed by someone else. How does your employer feel about you taking time off now?
I don't believe he has any problem with it.
Doesn't have any problem. So if this case took 2 or 3 days, you would suffer no financial hardship, or
no, sir.
Would you lose pay over this, or
no?
Do I look guilty?
No.
Do I look innocent?
No.
You haven't made up your mind yet, then?
That's correct. How I look.
But I've been arrested, and the state is intent on prosecuting me. They've gone to great expense and trouble to set this scene up so they can deprive me of some wealth or freedom. Doesn't that lead you to suspect that I might be guilty?
You might be, but again, you might not be.
Do you approve of the state spending this money and time on a very simple case that might yield $25 in fine?
I think I'll answer that like I did the last one. I don't necessarily approve of it, but I don't necessarily disapprove of it either.
Do you have difficulty making up your mind?
No, I don't.
And are you stubborn enough to maintain your opinion against severe opposition?
Yes.
In other words, if these jurors who are going to sit with you are all adamant that I'm guilty, and you think that I'm innocent, you can maintain that position against their arguments and ridicule and whatever might take place in the jury room?
I think probably my wife would be the best one to answer that, but I think, yes, I would stand my ground.
Have you ever fought for a principle?
Yes, I have.
Stubbornly?
Very stubbornly.
And it wouldn't enter your mind that perhaps I should admit my guilt, pay a fine, and a small fine, and put an end to all this mishmash?
No.
Do you want to serve on this jury?
I'd like to see what it's all about, yes.
Do you want to find me guilty?
No, I surely don't.
Do you think all laws are just?
No.
Do you think I have to obey all laws on the book?
It would depend on whether those laws applied to you. I'm sure there'd be laws that didn't apply to you.
Are all laws constitutional in your mind?
In my mind, no.
Do I have to obey an unconstitutional law?
I don't believe so.
Why do you think that? Why do I not have to obey an unconstitutional law?
Oh, well, I remember the Constitution from high school. I would say that constitutional guarantees are guarantees.
I'm not quite sure I don't quite understand what you mean by that, but let's go on. Have you read our Constitution?
In high
the
school,
United States
yes.
Constitution. What do you think of it?
Oh, I think in certain areas it's probably outmoded.
And in other words, you think it ought to be changed or done away with or something like that?
Changed, maybe.
Changed. Have you read the Fifth Amendment?
I believe.
Do you know what the subject matter of the Fifth Amendment is?
Yes.
How about the Fourth Amendment?
I believe it has something to do with privacy.
If I don't take the witness stand in this case, will you hold that against me in any way?
I don't think I would, no.
And if I refuse to answer a question when I take the witness stand, will you hold that against me?
No, I don't believe so.
You won't think I have something to hide?
No, I believe it would be your right.
If it's important for the state to prosecute me in this matter, don't you think it's important for me to defend myself?
Yes, I do.
If I don't answer a question on the witness stand, well, doesn't that make you think that I'm hiding some criminal activity?
Criminal activity?
Yeah. Why shouldn't I answer any question that they ask on the witness stand? Well, if I refuse to answer, doesn't that mean I'm trying to hide something?
No, I suppose a person has a right not to answer something. For whatever reason he may have.
How about the fact that I'm representing myself? Wouldn't I be better off having a lawyer represent me?
You might be.
In other words, by representing myself, it would appear that I have a fool for a client.
I think I've heard that saying before.
How do you feel about it?
I've never seen an attorney represent himself.
That doesn't quite answer my question.
No, if you believe you can do it, I would say it would be all right.
You don't think it's a little foolish of me for doing so, huh?
No.
How are you at learning new concepts? If something new comes up here that you haven't heard before, are you willing to consider it seriously and learn from it?
Definitely.
If I resist having the government intrude into my life, does that mean that I'm a criminal or antisocial or something?
No.
Do you have any friends or relatives that are policemen?
Not that I'm aware of.
Not that you're aware of. Do you belong to any political organizations?
No.
Do you favor any one over the other?
I think I would, yes.
I'm not going to ask you which parties you're partial to, but...
I wouldn't answer.
How about any professional organizations, trade organizations? Do you remember of anything associated with your work?
No.
Any social organizations?
No.
Fraternal organizations?
No.
How do you feel about political minorities? Communists or socialists or that sort of thing?
I have my opinion.
Do you think they deserve equal treatment in our society?
Well, you specifically named one, and is that what I am answering on, or
I'm asking it as a general question, but I named those two specifically as being representative samples.
Well, as far as, would you repeat your question again?
I'm not sure that I can, but my question has to do with political minorities. And I'm interested to know how you feel about various political minorities. For example, communists and socialists and Moonies, or they're not a political minority, but religious minority. Let's stick to political minorities right now. How do you...
As far as communists and socialists, I have negative feelings.
Negative feelings about communists and socialists, although they are legal political entities in this country. You still are prejudiced towards them, is that correct?
Somewhat.
Are there others are there others for which you hold prejudice?
I would believe everybody has some prejudice towards one political minority or another.
And you would include yourself among those people. You are saying that you do have prejudice against certain political minorities.
Yes.
How about social minorities or religious minorities? How about blacks or Hispanics or non-Caucasians? Prejudice there. How about religious minorities?
I have no prejudice whatsoever there.
How about the Moonies or any one of a dozen other religious minorities that exist?
It's not for me, but if they like it, that's fine.
You're not upset at having a religious minority around? If your section of...
So long as it is not trying to force itself upon me, no.
If this trial takes a week, will that cause your job to suffer?
Well, there'd be work that wouldn't get done, but there wouldn't be anything that couldn't be overcome.
Would that cause you any financial loss if this trial were to take a week?
No.
Do you know what a hung jury is?
Yes.
If you were the one who caused there to be a hung jury, would that make you feel guilty or uncomfortable?
No.
You would just sit there and be stubborn for a week if you had to?
If I had to, yes. If I believed what I believed.
Well, Your Honor, I'm a little disturbed at this juror's attitude towards political minorities. We don't know what will be established with respect to my political membership in this trial, so I would like to challenge this juror for cause for that reason.
Okay. That's an iffy one. I don't know how a judge would rule on that, Mr. Curtis, but I think in this case, I would rule that he's not prejudiced because we haven't established that you're a political minority. However, if it did come out in the trial that you were in fact a communist, your objection to that juror at this time, and to challenge him for cause, if he were left on the jury, would be grounds for appealable error. Because you've raised the issue and you've raised it timely. Well, let's see. What was our score? Did we get rid of one juror and we kept 3 on? And that's just about what the potential jury challenge is going to work out in real life, because it's extremely difficult to challenge a juror for cause. If you can get 25% of them off, you'd be doing extremely well. I want to emphasize that we took a little extra time here in this lesson to show you this jury selection process. It's really nothing to be afraid of. You should do 1 or 2 in the traffic court before you take on any major cases. when you get into the traffic court, it's going to be a heart-throbbing, exciting experience. I think it is for all of us. But never allow yourself to be rushed. Remember the Argersinger case, wherein the Supreme Court told us that it's rush, rush, hurry, hurry. I mean, after all, we're only trying to get $25 out of this guy, and he's challenged the courts. He has challenged the government. He's compelling us into a jury trial that's going to cost $1,000 to $1,500 here in Idaho. And we have to give him this jury trial, but we don't want to spend any extra time on it. And so it's for that reason that this jury trial is extremely important. If every citizen in this country demanded his right to a jury trial, which is a fundamental right, we could probably shut down 99% of all of these superfluous cases of trying people and using the courts for using the police powers, rather, through the courts to exact taxes. So take your time. Do not allow yourself to be rushed. And if the judge says something on the order of, well, you've taken enough time and I'm going to limit this to 5 minutes. Oh, I didn't realize, Your Honor, that there was some limit on voir diring the jury. I'm terribly sorry, but I'm pro se here, or I'm here in propria persona. I don't think I can do it in 5 minutes, but I'll do the best I can. Never be a kook. Don't allow the judge to get you into such a position that you're going to act like some kind of a nut in the courtroom, because that's what they want to do. They want to make this guy look like he's some kind of a screwball for doing this. That not only prejudices the jury, but it also sets precedent, and it frightens people from coming back and doing this again. And you may have some other patriots in the courtroom watching you. Always keep your cool and never allow the judge or the prosecutor to get under your skin. As you can see here, Mr. Curtis has handled this entire questioning of the jury slowly, methodically, step by step, and in some of the cases the judge may have dismissed a juror. One case that Mr. Curtis did, he dismissed 4 or 5 jurors in a row on a couple of key questions. Whether or not you'll have that experience will remain to be seen. You'll have to practice for yourself. Keep in mind that Argersinger case, remember that you're not trying to throw every juror off, because ultimately we're going to select a jury. But the purpose is to find anyone on that jury who is prejudiced toward you in some way. Now, whatever the charge, what you've seen here is a representative sample of jury selection. It's not a difficult process, and don't ever let anybody kid you that it is. Your first time out, remain cool. Just watch the proceedings. The judge will tell you when to ask the questions. The prosecutor may or may not object. If the prosecutor objects, remember, it's a general objection that you must specifically address. When the prosecutor jumps up and says, well, I object to this line of questioning of the jury, this juror trying to establish whether or not the juror believes in the Constitution or not, that doesn't go to the heart and core of whether the jury, this juror is prejudiced. Then you've got to come back with your little speech and say, well, I'm known as a constitutionalist in the community, and the subject matter may come up, and I think that it's necessary and imperative to find out what the prejudices of a jury, a prospective jury member would be concerning the Constitution. Because remember, when you bring up that word Constitution, due process, 4th Amendment, 5th Amendment, whatever it may be, that prosecutor is going to come unhinged. All right, I think that we've covered the jury selection pretty admirably. I think it would be a good idea. I've done this many a time, and I always suggest to my students, just go sit in on a jury trial. It'll take you a couple of 3 days. If you're a housewife, just prepare to take a couple of days off and go down and watch one. What you're going to see there is going to be essentially what you saw here. That'll give you the kind of confidence and a little bit of the forewarned or the pre-knowledge that you're going to need when you go into your own case. Because remember, this whole thing of law, it's simply a matter of learning how to do it. You know, if you're a housewife, you don't have any problems washing the dishes, do you? Well, if you're a lawyer, you don't have any problems selecting a jury. And so all you're trying to do is to teach the lawyer how to wash the dishes and the housewife how to select the jury. It's just that simple. All right, now let's take up the prosecutor's half of the case, and let's watch a prosecutor then begin with his opening statement, because we're going to presume that the jury has been selected. Are you going to challenge this jury? Or are you going to accept them as seated?
I will accept them as seated.
All right. By accepting them as seated, he shows us that he's not a kook. But it's not inconceivable that if you've got some people over here on a jury, for instance, who are all members of a particular church, you have a drunk driving charge, and 3 members over here are members of RID, what would you do?
I would challenge it.
I would challenge the array of the jury. I don't accept this jury as seated because 3 members are members of RID. And it's for that reason that 3 of the jury members are particularly prejudiced in this particular type of case. That's the way I would handle that. All right? So let's take a look now at the prosecutor's opening statement.